Hello, folks. Welcome to Barton College School of Business and Innovation's Business of series. And this week, I am very, very happy to have Dr. Scott Gerard with us from Knowledge Reactor. And we're talking about the business of composite AI. Welcome.
It's great to be here, Ken.
Great to see you, Scott. You know, a lot of our audience, they know what AI is, or at least they think they do, right? But composite AI, tell us what composite AI is.
It's kind of a new thing. We have the whole generative AI and we have the agentic stuff. But I think what's really important here that we're going to see in the next few years, and I think it's going to become more prominent, is this idea of composite AI. And the three elements that I think are important for it are that it is multi-agent. I did my PhD in multi-agent systems, so I'm very interested in that. That's not a particularly new idea, but multi-agent is part of this composite. I think they're also multi-tool. Tools are what these LLMs use to go out and, like a calculator would be a very simple example of a tool. And I think a lot of the systems that we're building are going to be multi-tool. I need calculators for this, and I need access to these to the web, and I need all these other kind of tools to help me do my thing. So multi-agent, multi-tool, both of those have been done already. That's not new, really. The thing that I think is not particularly novel, but is also totally underappreciated and underserved is this idea of multi-AI, that LLMs are great, but I think too many people want to use LLMs for everything. And I don't think that's the right answer. There's a lot of AI that can be very valuable for particular applications, and that a multi-agent system, some of them will be LLMs and some of them will be just the traditional optimized AI, traditional AI things. So those are the three elements that I think are really the most important that kind of make composite AI kind of a somewhat of a new idea. It's not totally new, but it's a new flavor of it, a new vision of it, if you will.
I really like the way you frame that. I mean, whether multi-agent, multi-tool, multi-AI, particularly multi-AI, because you're right. I mean, those of us that have been in this business for more than a decade, we'll just put it that way, AI means something different and has meant something different to us for years. But for the folks that are just getting into AI in the Gen AI phase, the past 3 years, say, it's very interesting. So you're right. A lot of people are using AI for everything, and actually, well, specifically Gen AI for everything, when maybe they need to look at something different. So thank you for framing it that way. But before we get too deep into this, I'd like for the audience to know who Dr. Scott Gerard is and how did you get started in all this? And tell us about how your career began and also how you ended up with Knowledge Reactor. And then we'll dive deeper into composite AI after that.
Sure. I've been around a long time. I've been in the IT field for many years. I was at IBM for many decades. I've always liked computers. My dad, he built an Altair 8080, which was really the first home computer in the market. This was many decades ago. And I actually wrote a program for him to load stuff from tape, kind of got into it that way. I have a physics degree, but this idea of computers in the background always was intriguing to me. And so I guess I'm kind of the ultimate reductionist. From the physics point of view, I wanted to take everything down into atoms and then to quarks and then the fundamental pieces of the universe physically. But the computer science is kind of doing the same thing. Let's break these software problems down into bits, the fundamental things there. So going from atoms to bits was kind of a common theme in my life. But I worked through this whole many different jobs within the IT industry. The one thing, though, that kind of kept coming back to me was I had this idea many, many years ago of a composite system of multiple components. So I kind of viewed them as balls on top of the water, but they were linked together. And as a wave would come through, the balls would kind of move together. They were each different, but they were moving in coordination with each other. And that multi-component idea really turned into multi-agent stuff when I was doing my dissertation. And I think it's a perfect segue into this whole composite AI system that we have today.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for taking us on your journey of how you got to be who you are. That's very exciting always to figure out. And our students love to know, how can you become a Scott Gerard? How do you become something after spending decades at an organization that you can actually also be entrepreneurial too? And that's a really excellent part of your story. Just to kind of remind you, our approach to the business of series is designed to help students learn more about new and different things and a meaningful, curated environment, right? So they can look at this video next week, or they can look at it in 10 years from now, and hopefully there'll be something that they can get out of it. We started our conversation talking about the three things that you were talking about, kind of making up composite AI. So I'd like for you to dig a little bit more into this. And you can start with multi-agent or multi-tool or multi-AI, whichever you prefer. But you're right about it. It's not one powerful model. It's all the things connected. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the connectedness of that makes composite AI so compelling.
I think I'll focus on the multi AI. That seems to be closest to my heart in any case. And it's also, I think, the most novel. The idea that if you just came into the AI scene since November of 2023, then far too many people think that AI is just generative AI. And it's a big, important piece. It's very valuable. There's no question about that. But there's like 70 or 80 years of AI that go before that. And it really started, one of my most interesting facts is the first artificial neural network was conceived in 1943. This is in the middle of World War II. You know, we're fighting in the Pacific, we're fighting in the Atlantic, and these guys come up with this idea of, hey, we could build this artificial neuron that's definitely modeled on the human neuron, but let's see if we can do some cool computing with just this particular metaphor, this particular architecture for things. Over the years, there's decades and decades of work that have been done on traditional AI. I wish I had a better name for it, but that's the name that I usually come back to. It is not generative. It is not probabilistic like these generative AI models are. Many of them are deterministic. If you run the same problem again, you're going to get exactly the same answer. And many of the algorithms are known to be optimal. It will give you the best possible answer that exists given the various assumptions that you have. And just because we have generative AI as a new additional tool doesn't mean all these old algorithms and old tools are no longer useful. Maybe they're implemented as a tool in a modern generative AI system, but maybe they're not. Maybe one agent is generative and the next agent is traditional. I think
Right.
that's a very rational way to do it. And some of the applications that I'm currently working on are built exactly that way.
I think that's really compelling. I remember just a few years ago, I mean, it wasn't even 5, 6 years ago, we were talking about deep learning, machine learning, all those things, and that was the norm, believe it or not. And we thought we were bleeding edge, and we weren't. But it was like I said, legacy or traditional or whatever AI. It's just something we'd worked with every day. One thing that I think the LLMs have taught us over the past few years is that, oh wow, there's something that can upset the apple cart pretty quickly. And now the other stuff we've been doing all these decades are still valid and fine. It's just that we have a new tool, a new player in the sandbox, if you will. You talk about a practical pattern that you use, and I'd love for you to kind of walk us through that pattern, if you wouldn't mind. And maybe that'll help the listeners understand that there are more things out there than just Gen AI as you create this picture of the composite AI world.
Absolutely. What a lot of people are doing today is I'm going to my LLM and I'm saying, here's my prompt. I want you to do this sort of a thing. But what I want is JSON to become the output. That's a very structured format that I want out. And I'm going to use that structured thing to go into further agents. So if you follow that logically, what you're going to end up with is at the core of your agentic or of your composite AI system, you may have these deterministic elements that are based on just traditional AI that are dealing with completely structured information. It doesn't work in all cases, but if it can, you're going to get great answers if you're using these deterministic AIs because in many cases, they are the optimal answers. Around that, you have generative AI. So if you take this unstructured, messy, noisy data from the real world, you're reading documents, you're reading healthcare records, you're reading noisy sensor data, whatever, you're taking this messy, noisy data, you're using some kind of generative AI to understand that and to resolve that down into a structured format. So you have probabilistic coming in, then you do your deterministic work, and then if you want, you can say, well, I don't want to have just, a bunch of numbers coming out. I want to fluff that up into text or into an image for the humans to deal with. So you then put some generative AI on the back end. So what you have is this deterministic core and
Yeah.
a probabilistic periphery. That is one way of kind of doing these composite systems. It's not the only one, but I think it's a really interesting way because before the generative AIs came out, it was always hard to get data transferred from the real messy world. Do we
Right.
even go into these applications?
I will say this, that does sound like a tasty sandwich, have the probabilistic and the deterministic in the middle. And I think you're right. I think it makes the ability for us to do research, to do brainstorming, ideation, it makes it all much easier and grounded in the fact that we do have some deterministic capabilities in the middle, as you were saying. So tell us, why does this work? I mean, I'd love for you to maybe build on that metaphor of the sandwich if you want to, but I think it's where you are going with this. I love how you've got the new tools integrating with the more traditional tools. So talk a bit more about where do we go now? Why does this work?
I think it works for a lot of reasons. That sandwich that I gave you just in the previous answer is certainly valuable. But what do we do as humans? We often do a workflow, and the workflow has multiple steps. Okay, let's use an agent for each of the steps. Some of those steps need to be implemented with generative AI, some do not. If you're trying to balance the financial books, you probably want to use some financial software to do some of those steps because you know exactly what that financial software is going to do with the things going on. But you've still got these messy elements that you have to deal with. And that's the place where a generative AI can really help out. So a bigger sandwich would be a workflow. How many steps do you have? You probably have one agent for each of those steps. They may go back and forth. There may be loops, but it's just the workflows that we've been doing all along. But now we're automating some, all, many of those steps. Some of them, those workflow steps could still be human in the loop. And for certain places, that's critical that we have humans making some of those decisions. But, what does your workflow require? Just follow the workflow and implement it that way.
That's a really great point. And I think a lot of our listeners, particularly our younger students who are just now scratching at what does it mean to be in business, to be an entrepreneur, to start something that hasn't existed before, to know that there are products and tools out there that can help them along their way. I'm reminded of some work that I did years ago with enterprise architecture. What was really cool about that is it's all your assets organized in a logical way. And in fact, one of the best definitions I've ever heard for what enterprise architecture is was from my friend Jeannie Ross up at MIT. And she said, it's organizing logic. And that's really all it is.
Dr. Gerard, thank you for telling us about composite AI, in particularly the composite AI sandwich.
The combination of probabilistic, deterministic, and backed probabilistic. I've been using Gen AI since high school, and I use ChatGPT, my roommate uses Claude, and the person down the hall uses Copilot.
There are so many tools out there. How do we know which ones are probabilistic and which ones are deterministic? Can you give us an idea on how to use these tools and what to use them for?
That's really a great question. There are a great many tools that you can use. Partly this depends on if you're a programmer or not. If you're not a programmer, you can certainly use some of these tools like Claude Code or ChatGPT does this, Gemini does this, and you can say, I want you to write me some code that does X, Y, or Z. So the probabilistic code is code like Anthropic, like Claude, that takes messy, unstructured data to structured data, or vice versa, or inputs images, or generates images, or deals with speech or video. Those are all unstructured. Those are all in the probabilistic camp. But you can use these probabilistic tools to also generate deterministic code because you can say a planning algorithm is a great one of these old-fashioned deterministic tools. How do I get from North Carolina to Hawaii to take a vacation? Well, the steps are, you buy your ticket, you pack your bag, you drive to the airport, you get on the flight. What are the actual steps that I need to do to take this vacation? But there are lots of other planning things that need to be done too. If you're in the manufacturing space, how do I move these raw inputs to my finished product? That would be a deterministic planning algorithm. There are search algorithms. What happens in your car with the GPS? How do I get from my home to my business or to the conference center, whatever? Those are deterministic tools, and the rules for doing that give you optimal answers. So you can have some of these generative AI generate that code for you. They do great jobs, but I still have to spend time debugging them a little bit. But there are also tools. If you're into Python, there are zillions of packages out there that will do some of these things. So maybe you're going to write one agent that does search, another agent that just does planning. Those are the kinds of things, and those are the deterministic elements. But there's lots and lots of variations on that whole thing.
Again, thank you for making that really clear because if I'm a student and I'm trying to think of a career where I can be valuable, clearly I've got to include AI in the matrix somewhere, that I'm going to have to partner with AI. I'm going to have to be able to learn to work with multi-agents, and I'm going to have to know which AI tool to use when. If I'm working in a compliance role, for example, let's say that I'm working in either drug discovery or drug manufacturing or something like that, compliance is a very big part of it. So even though it might be exciting to say, I'm going to use Gen AI to help me with this, the truth is using a more traditional or legacy AI tool that's more deterministic may be where you need to spend the time to make sure that you, from a compliance perspective, for example, that you are meeting the needs of the CFR or whatever the Annex 1 or Annex 2 that you have to deal with regard to a governance kind of thing. So I think it's really interesting. You've really helped us decide that there are different ways to go, and then choosing that path is really up to the individual, the human, if you will, based on what they really need for what they are doing for their career or for their entrepreneurial effort or for wherever they are in life.
I will add this, that I used to be young too, and I had these grandiose dreams all the time of things that were going to happen. And God bless the young people that do this. It's a great way to do new innovation. But I would suggest try to keep what you decide to try to build in check. But on the other hand, to say, well, you want to go into compliance, so you're never going to use AI. I don't think that's the right answer either. Even if you're the person that has to define some of these deterministic rules, you're still part of the multi-agent system that's around you. You need to understand what the generative AIs are generating, and
Yep.
you're going to say, I'm sorry, guys, your generative AI is out of control. You need to do X, Y, and Z to it somehow. So it's not that you're divorcing yourself from AI. You're part of the whole system. You're part of this whole composite system that's very, very important. And so, yeah, you're going to have some fun with the stuff too.
You know, that's really perfect. You're part of a multi-agent composite AI system. And I think that's the message. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, what was your most profound and maybe perhaps unexpected realization as a business owner as you made the leap from IBM to being entrepreneur? So can you talk a bit about what was your most profound realization?
I thought that I could basically do everything. That's kind of why I decided to go out on my own. I have the technical background. I didn't think that was going to be a problem. I can speak with people. I didn't think that was going to be a problem. But I always thought the marketing and the sales was going to be tricky. And looking back, I tried to do that on my own. I thought, I'm a smart guy. I can do this. My biggest mistake was day one, I should have hired a marketing person. Marketing is different than where my skills are. And I've tried to pick it up. I've made multiple runs at it. Can't say that I've actually done a very good job at it. So I'm still struggling with that part today. The marketing for me was the hard part. And the point of this is you're probably not good at everything. Maybe you are good at marketing, but you're not good at something else. Find people who are and work with them. That's what I'm trying to do now. I've got a marketing person that I'm working with, and she's helping me out, so that's good. But don't think you can do everything on your own. Be multi-agent. You need a multi-agent system to help you get this whole business to work together.
I think you just segued everything back into the composite thing. Maybe you've just defined the composite entrepreneur, a multi-agent composite entrepreneur. I love
I
it, Scott.
like that. I like that, Ken.
That's wonderful. All right. So before we go, I ask this of all of our guests. Is your business a lifestyle company? I often ask people, why did you go into business? Is it a lifestyle company or is it a company that you want to sell? Is it built to sell? Is it something you just want to do because you want to be employed by yourself and not work for a company? Or did it come at you via some sort of mergers or acquisition route or some sort of private equity slammed you together with somebody else? What kind of business is Knowledge Reactor?
Well, I'm primarily a technologist, but like I said, I thought I could do pretty much all this on my own. And rather than having my managers and my vice presidents tell me what I was going to work on for the next 6 or 12 months, I wanted to be able to work on what I wanted to be able to work on. I wanted to do a lot more multi-agent system stuff than I was able to do at IBM. So it's like, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find the people who need that. And I'm not going to give up until I find those people so that I can do what I want to do. Plus, it gives me the option every now and then my wife will go, well, you want to go to this conference? Do you have time for that? And I'll just say, I talked to the boss and he told me I could go. So the freedom to do what I want. And as I'm getting a little later into my career, if I want to take the day off, I can. If I want to do something else, I can. I know the cost involved. I know what it's going to cost me to do that. But if I think that's a good trade off, then I'll make that trade off. So it's kind of a lifestyle and it's kind of me doing what I want to do.
Wonderful. These are all good lessons for our audience. So thank you for that. And thank you for your time today for the Barton College School of Business and Innovation's Business of Composite AI. So thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Ken. This has been great.